I stood on the pier, watching as Kelly walked along the beach, her hair blowing in the wind, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The scene was almost picturesque, a perfect snapshot of our supposed happiness. We had come to Miami for the annual water sports festival, hoping to reconnect and rekindle the spark that had been fading over the years. As the waves gently lapped at the shore, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Kelly had always loved the ocean, but her enthusiasm seemed different this time, almost desperate. She had taken up surfing lessons, spending hours on the beach while I explored other parts of the festival. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. Deciding to surprise her, I went to the surf shack where she had her lessons. I saw her laughing and chatting with a tall, tanned instructor as I approached. His name was Brad, and he was everything I wasn't, young, fit, and carefree. They were standing close, too close for my comfort. "Hey, Kelly," I called out, trying to keep my voice light. She turned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she forced a smile. "Hi, babe. This is Brad, my surf instructor," she said, her tone too casual, too forced. Brad extended a hand, his grip firm and confident. "Nice to meet you, man. Kelly's a natural out there." I nodded, but my mind was racing. That evening, when I brought it up, Kelly brushed it off, accusing me of being jealous and overprotective. "It's just a friendship," she insisted, her eyes darting away. "You're reading too much into it." But the late nights started soon after. Kelly would come back to our hotel room long after the sun had set, claiming she had extra practice. Her phone was always glued to her hand, and she seemed more distant with each passing day. One night, as I lay awake, I heard her whispering into her phone, her voice low and intimate. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. My heart pounded in my chest as I fought the urge to confront her right then and there. The next day, I decided to follow her. She left for the beach as usual, but instead of going to the surf shack, she met Brad at a small cafe down the shore. They sat close, their heads bent together in deep conversation. When they left the cafe, I saw Brad wrap his arm around her shoulders, pulling her into a quick kiss. That evening, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Kelly, we need to talk," I said as soon as she walked through the door. Her eyes flashed with irritation. "About what?" "About Brad. I saw you two today." Her face paled, but she quickly regained her composure. "It's not what you think, Mike." "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Because it sure looks like you're having an affair." She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "Mike, I don't know how to say this. I'm in love with Brad. I think we need a divorce." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, speechless, as she packed her bags and left the room. That night I wandered down to the beach, hoping to find some clarity in the crashing waves. Instead, I found Kelly and Brad sitting by a bonfire, wrapped in each other's arms. It was then that I knew our marriage was truly over. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of it all. Staying at the festival, I decided to immerse myself in something new, surfing. It was a way to distract myself, to feel alive again. It was there that I met Sarah, a diving instructor with a kind smile and a patient heart. She helped me find my footing, both on the board and in life. Returning home after the festival, I filed for divorce and started to rebuild my life. The experience in Miami had changed me, and though the pain of Kelly's betrayal still lingered, I found hope in new beginnings. This was the start of a new chapter, one where I could finally find peace and happiness on my terms. I stared at the divorce papers on the coffee table, feeling the weight of every word. It was surreal to think that my marriage to Kelly, which had once been so full of love and promise, had come to this. The festival in Miami was meant to be a fresh start, a way to reconnect and find each other again. Instead, it had revealed the cracks in our foundation. Reflecting on the weeks leading up to the festival, I remembered the first signs that something was wrong. Kelly had been distant for months. Her laughter was less frequent, her touch less tender. I thought the trip might help us find our way back to each other. How naive I had been. The day after our confrontation, I tried to focus on the festival activities. The air was filled with excitement and energy, but I felt like an outsider looking in. I wandered through the bustling crowd, feeling lost and disconnected. Everywhere I turned, couples were enjoying the festivities together. a painful reminder of what I had lost. I decided to join a surfing class, hoping the physical exertion would distract me. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Sarah, welcomed me with a warm smile. Her easygoing demeanor put me at ease, and for a while I was able to forget my troubles. As I paddled out into the waves, I found a strange sense of peace. The ocean had a way of washing away the noise in my head, leaving only the rhythm of the surf and the sound of my breath. I wiped out more times than I could count, but each fall into the water felt like a small baptism, a chance to start over. After the lesson, Sarah and I struck up a conversation. She had a way of listening that made me feel understood, something I hadn't felt in a long time. We talked about everything, our favorite books, our dreams, and even our fears. It was refreshing to open up to someone new, someone who didn't know the baggage I carried. As the days passed, I found myself looking forward to our conversations. Sarah's kindness and understanding were a balm to my wounded heart. She never pried, but she listened whenever I needed to talk. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, I finally told her about Kelly. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It must be incredibly hard." "It is," I admitted. "But being here, learning to surf and talking to you, it's helping, more than I thought it would." She smiled a gentle and reassuring smile. Sometimes a change of scenery can make all the difference. Meanwhile, Kelly and Brad were inseparable. I saw them everywhere, holding hands at the beach, laughing together at the cafe, their bodies entwined as they surfed the waves. Each sighting was a dagger to my heart, a reminder of my failure to keep her. One evening, unable to bear the sight of them any longer, I confronted Brad. I found him alone by the surf shack, waxing his board. "Brad," I said, my voice strained with anger and hurt, "we need to talk." He looked up, surprised but not defensive. "Mike, I didn't want it to happen this way." "Then how did you want it to happen?" I demanded. "You stole my wife." Brad sighed, setting his board down. "Kelly came to me, Mike. She was unhappy, and we connected. I didn't plan this, but I can't ignore my feelings for her." "Your feelings?" I scoffed. "What about my feelings? What about our marriage?" Brad didn't have an answer, and in that silence I realized that arguing with him was pointless. Kelly had made her choice, and no amount of anger or pleading would change that. As the festival drew to a close, I knew it was time to return home and face the reality of my situation. The divorce papers awaited my signature, and the life I had known was ending. But thanks to Sarah and the ocean, I felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, an opportunity to rebuild and rediscover myself. Back in our hometown, I finalized the divorce. Kelly moved in with Brad, and I moved on with my life. It wasn't easy, but the lessons I learned in Miami stayed with me. I took up surfing as a regular hobby, finding solace in the waves and the community they brought. One day, as I stood on the pier once again, watching the sunset over the horizon, I felt a sense of peace. The pain of Kelly's betrayal had dulled, replaced by a newfound strength and resilience. At that moment, I knew that I was going to be okay. The divorce was finalized swiftly. Kelly moved in with Brad, and I found myself alone in our once shared apartment, surrounded by memories of a life that no longer existed. I spent my days trying to fill the void, but the nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening, and the bed felt unbearably large without Kelly beside me. One particularly restless night, I found myself wandering through the apartment, touching the remnants of our life together, photographs, souvenirs, her favorite books. I stumbled upon our wedding album and couldn't help but flip through the pages. Each photograph was a reminder of the promises we had made and the dreams we had shared. The betrayal felt deeper with every image. Unable to bear the memories, I decided to take a walk. The cool night air was refreshing, and I headed towards the beach, seeking solace in the familiar sound of the waves. As I walked along the shore, I spotted a bonfire in the distance. Drawn to the warmth and light, I approached and saw a group of surfers gathered around, sharing stories and laughter. Among them was Sarah. She saw me and waved, her smile a beacon of kindness in the darkness. "Mike, come join us." I hesitated for a moment, but then made my way over. The group welcomed me warmly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of belonging. We talked and laughed, and for a few hours I was able to forget the pain of my broken marriage. As the fire died down, Sarah and I walked along the beach. She listened as I poured out my heart, sharing my deepest fears and regrets. "It feels like I'm drowning," I confessed, "like I'll never be able to move on." Sarah stopped and looked at me, her eyes filled with empathy. "You will move on, Mike. It takes time, but you'll find your way, and you're not alone." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me out of the depths of despair. I realized that while Kelly's betrayal had shattered me, it didn't define me. I had the power to rebuild my life, and with Sarah's friendship, I felt a renewed sense of hope. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into surfing. The physical exertion and focus it required were therapeutic, helping me channel my pain into something positive. Sarah continued to be a constant presence, encouraging and supporting me every step of the way. One sunny afternoon, as we sat on our boards waiting for the next wave, Sarah turned to me and said, "Have you ever tried diving?" "Diving?" I shook my head. "No, I've never really thought about it." "You should give it a try," she suggested. "It's a whole different world down there, peaceful, beautiful. It might be just what you need." Intrigued, I agreed to give it a shot. The next day, Sarah took me to the dive shop and helped me gear up. As we descended into the clear blue water, I was struck by the tranquility and beauty of the underwater world. Colorful fish darted around, and the coral reefs were vibrant with life. It was a stark contrast to the chaos and pain I felt on the surface. Diving became my new passion. The underwater world offered an escape, a place where I could forget my troubles and simply exist in the moment. Sarah and I spent countless hours exploring the reefs, and with each dive, I felt a little more whole. Back on land, I started to rebuild my life in other ways. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and even started dating again. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to move forward. One evening, as Sarah and I sat on the beach watching the sunset, I realized how much I had grown. The pain of Kelly's betrayal was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I had found strength in myself and the support of those around me. Months had passed since the festival in Miami. I stood on the same pier where I had watched Kelly walk away, but this time I felt different, stronger, wiser. The sunset over the horizon cast a golden glow over the water, and I felt a sense of peace. I had come a long way since that fateful trip. Surfing and diving had become more than just hobbies. They were lifelines that had pulled me out of the darkest moments. Sarah had been a rock, her unwavering support helping me navigate the tumultuous waters of my emotions. One day, as we prepared for a dive, Sarah turned to me, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I've got a surprise for you." "A surprise?" I raised an eyebrow, curious. She handed me a small, wrapped box. "Open it." Inside was a keychain with a small silver surfboard and a note that read, "For new adventures." Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at her. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." She smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You've come so far, Mike. I'm proud of you." We dove into the water, the familiar tranquility enveloping us. As we explored the reef, I felt a sense of closure. The underwater world had taught me the importance of patience and resilience. Just as the ocean was vast and ever-changing, so was life. And just as the waves would always return to the shore, I'd found my way back to myself. Emerging from the water, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew that the future was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced my deepest fears and come out stronger on the other side. Back on the beach, Sarah and I sat in the fading light, the waves gently lapping at our feet. "What's next for you, Mike?" she asked. I looked out at the horizon, a sense of excitement bubbling up inside me. "I'm not sure. But whatever it is, I'm ready." With Sarah by my side and the lessons I had learned, I felt prepared to face whatever came next. This was a new beginning, a chance to create a life filled with adventure, love, and happiness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was no longer the man who had stood on this pier months ago, broken and lost. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. Returning to my hometown after the whirlwind of the Miami Festival, I felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. The place felt both familiar and alien, as if I were seeing it through new eyes. My journey had changed me, and I was determined to rebuild my life from the ground up. One of the first steps was reconnecting with old friends, people I had unintentionally pushed away during the tumultuous last years of my marriage. I reached out to Jake, my best friend from college, and we arranged to meet at our favorite bar. Walking into the bar, I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. The familiar scent of beer and fried food, the chatter of regulars, and the warm, dim lighting made me feel at home. "Mike, long time no see!" Jake called out as he stood up from our usual booth. He looked almost the same as I remembered, maybe a bit more filled out with the same easygoing grin. "Hey, Jake," I said, smiling genuinely for the first time in what felt like forever. We hugged briefly, and I took a seat across from him. "So how have you been?" Jake asked, his expression turning serious. "I've heard bits and pieces, but I want to hear it from you." I took a deep breath and began to tell him everything. The crumbling marriage, the trip to Miami, Kelly's affair, and the painful process of moving on. Jake listened attentively, nodding occasionally, his face a mix of sympathy and support. "It's been a rough road," I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. "But I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's good to have you back, Mike. You've been through a lot, but it's clear you're stronger for it." We spent the rest of the evening catching up, laughing about old times, and making plans for the future. It felt good to reconnect, to remember that there were still people who cared about me and who I could lean on. In addition to rekindling old friendships, I decided to get involved in the local community. I found solace in helping others and sought out opportunities to volunteer. One day, I stumbled upon a youth center that offered various activities for kids. They were looking for volunteers to help teach sports and other skills. Remembering how much surfing had helped me, I offered to teach the kids how to surf. The director of the center, a kind woman named Laura, welcomed me enthusiastically. "The kids will love this," she said with a warm smile. "Surfing is such a great way to build confidence and have fun." The first day at the youth center was a bit nerve-wracking. I wasn't sure how the kids would react or if I would be able to connect with them. But as soon as we hit the beach, all my doubts faded away. The kids' excitement was contagious, and I found myself laughing and cheering them on as they tried to catch their first waves. One boy in particular, Tyler, stood out. He reminded me of myself at his age, full of potential but lacking direction. Tyler was shy and reserved, but I could see the spark in his eyes when he finally stood up on his board for the first time. His grin was infectious, and I knew I had made a positive impact. Volunteering at the youth center became a regular part of my routine. It was rewarding to give back and to feel like I was making a difference. Each day I saw the kids grow more confident and skilled, and their progress filled me with pride. One evening, as I sat with Jake in our usual booth, I reflected on how far I had come. "You know, I never thought I'd be here," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "But I'm glad I am. Helping those kids, reconnecting with old friends. It's given me a new sense of purpose." Jake clinked his glass against mine. "Here's to new beginnings, Mike. You're doing great." As I walked home that night, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment that had been missing for a long time. The journey was far from over, but for the first time I felt truly hopeful about the future. Reconnecting with my past had given me the strength to move forward, and I knew that whatever came next, I was ready to face it head-on. Life was slowly finding a new rhythm. My days were filled with surfing, photography, and volunteering at the youth center. The kids' laughter and excitement were infectious, and I found myself genuinely happy for the first time in a long while. I had reconnected with old friends, rekindling bonds that had been neglected. Things were starting to look up. One afternoon, while shopping for groceries, I bumped into Kelly. It was the last thing I expected. She looked surprised and a little nervous. "Mike, hi," she said, her voice tentative. "Kelly," I replied, my tone neutral. "How are you?" We exchanged small talk, but the tension was palpable. The aisles of the grocery store felt like a battlefield, each word a potential landmine. It was a reminder of the life we had shared and the pain that had followed. She mentioned that she and Brad were planning to move in together, which struck a chord. I felt a mixture of anger and sadness, but kept my composure. As we parted ways, I realized that while I had moved on in many ways, there were still wounds that needed healing. That night, I called Sarah. She listened patiently as I recounted the encounter. "It's normal to feel this way," she said. "Running into her brings back memories and emotions. But remember, you're on your path now. Keep moving forward." Her words were comforting, and I took them to heart. Kelly was a part of my past, and I was focused on my future. With Sarah's words in mind, I threw myself even more into my passions. Surfing became a daily ritual, a way to center myself and find peace. The ocean's rhythm was soothing, and each wave I caught felt like a small victory over the chaos that had consumed my life. I also took up photography, capturing the beauty of the ocean and the serene moments it brought me. My camera became an extension of myself, allowing me to see the world from a different perspective. Through the lens, I found beauty in the details and a sense of tranquility in the art of capturing fleeting moments. My work at the youth center flourished. The kids looked up to me, and their progress was a source of pride. One boy, Tyler, stood out. He reminded me of myself at his age, full of potential but lacking direction. I took him under my wing, teaching him not just about surfing, but about life. One day, as Tyler and I were sitting on our boards waiting for the next wave, he turned to me and said, "Mike, do you think I can get good at this?" "Of course you can, Tyler," I replied. "It just takes practice and patience. You've got the talent, and more importantly, you've got the heart." His face lit up with a smile, and in that moment, I saw a bit of my younger self in him. It felt good to be a mentor, to help guide someone through the rough patches of life. Sarah and I continued to spend time together. Our friendship deepened, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations and adventures. We explored new surfing spots, went on photo walks, and even tried out new restaurants in town. Her presence was a constant source of encouragement and joy. One evening, as we watched the sunset from our favorite spot on the beach, Sarah turned to me with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Mike, you've come a long way. I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you." She laughed softly. "I think you would have figured it out eventually, but I'm glad I could be here for the journey." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. Life was far from perfect, but I was on a path that felt right. I had found my groove, and for the first time in a long while, I was excited about the future. With a deep breath, I let go of the remnants of my past and embraced the possibilities ahead. The journey was ongoing, but I was no longer afraid. I had the support of friends, the joy of my passions, and the promise of new beginnings. And in that moment, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Sarah and I continued to spend time together, and our friendship blossomed into something deeper. We shared more than just our love for the ocean and adventures. We shared our dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. There was a comfort in her presence that I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, after a long day of surfing, we sat on the beach, watching the waves roll in. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over everything. I turned to Sarah, feeling a surge of gratitude for her friendship and support. "You've been a rock for me, Sarah," I said, my voice sincere. "I don't know how I would have gotten through these past few months without you." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I'm glad I could be here for you, Mike. You've come a long way, and it's been amazing to see you grow." There was a moment of silence as we both watched the horizon. Then, I felt a shift, a deepening of our connection. Without thinking, I reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed my hand gently, and I felt a warmth spread through me. As the days turned into weeks, our bond grew stronger. We started spending more time together, not just surfing and diving, but exploring new interests and hobbies. We went hiking, tried cooking new recipes, and even took a weekend trip to a nearby city to see a concert. Each experience brought us closer, and I found myself falling for her. One night, after an evening out with friends, we returned to my apartment. We were both a little tipsy and laughing about something silly that had happened. As I closed the door behind us, I turned to Sarah and our eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding between us. Slowly, I leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but then it deepened, fueled by months of unexpressed feelings. When we finally pulled away, she looked at me with a smile that melted my heart. "I've wanted to do that for a while," I admitted, my voice soft. "Me too," she replied, her eyes sparkling with happiness. That night marked a new beginning for us. We weren't just friends anymore. We were something more, something beautiful and hopeful. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. As Sarah and I navigated our new relationship, life continued to move forward. The youth center was thriving and Tyler's progress was a constant source of joy. He had grown more confident both in his surfing and in himself. Seeing his transformation reminded me of my journey and the importance of having someone to guide me through the rough patches. One afternoon, as I was finishing up a surf lesson with the kids, Laura, the director of the youth center, approached me with a serious expression. "Mike, can we talk for a minute?" she asked. "Sure, what's up?" I replied, curious. She led me to a quiet spot away from the kids and explained that the center was facing financial difficulties. "We've lost some funding, and if we don't raise enough money soon, we might have to cut some of our programs." The news hit me hard. The youth center had become a lifeline for many kids, and the thought of losing it was heartbreaking. "What can we do?" I asked, determined to help. "We're organizing a fundraiser," Laura said. "I was hoping you could help us plan it and maybe even perform or showcase your surfing skills to draw in a crowd." "Of course, I'll do whatever I can," I agreed immediately. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and I threw ourselves into planning the fundraiser. We reached out to local businesses for donations, organized events, and spread the word throughout the community. It was a lot of work, but it was also incredibly rewarding to see everyone come together for a common cause. The day of the fundraiser arrived, and the beach was buzzing with activity. There were food stalls, games, raffles, and a stage set up for performances. I had agreed to do a surfing demonstration with Tyler, and we had been practicing hard. As the crowd gathered around, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Tyler looked up at me, his eyes wide with anticipation. "You ready, buddy?" I asked. He nodded, a determined look on his face. "Ready." We hit the waves and the crowd cheered as we performed our routine. Tyler nailed every move and I couldn't have been prouder. When we finished, the applause was thunderous. Tyler beamed and I knew that we had done something special. The fundraiser was a huge success. We raised enough money to keep the youth center running and even expand some of our programs. The sense of accomplishment and community was overwhelming, and I realized just how far I had come. That night, as Sarah and I sat on the beach watching the stars, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Life was still full of challenges, but I had found my way through them with the support of friends and the strength I had discovered within myself. "I'm proud of you, Mike," Sarah said, resting her head on my shoulder. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling a swell of gratitude. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. With the success of the fundraiser behind us, life returned to its new normal. The youth center was thriving, and Tyler continued to excel both in surfing and in his personal growth. Sarah and I were happy, enjoying our relationship and the sense of stability we had built together. However, peace was short-lived. One day, while I was at the grocery store, I overheard a conversation between two women in the aisle. They were talking about Kelly, and what I heard made my blood run cold. "Did you hear? Kelly's seeing someone else now," one of the women said. "Really? I thought she was with that diving instructor," the other replied. "She's moved on to another guy, some lawyer she met at the gym." I tried to shake off the unease that settled over me as I walked away. But the rumors about Kelly brought back painful memories and stirred up emotions I thought I had put to rest. That evening, as Sarah and I were having dinner, I couldn't keep my thoughts to myself any longer. "I ran into Kelly today," I started, my voice tense. Sarah looked up, concern in her eyes. "What happened?" Nothing directly. I overheard some people talking about her. She's seeing someone new. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. How does that make you feel? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I don't know, I thought I was over it, but hearing about her moving on so quickly, it brought back a lot of old feelings. It's understandable, Sarah said gently. It's hard to hear about someone you loved moving on, especially after everything that happened. But remember, you're on your path now. You've made so much progress. Her words were a comfort, but the old wounds still ached. I realized that healing wasn't always a linear process. There would be setbacks and challenges, but I had to keep moving forward. The rumors about Kelly continued to haunt me over the next few days. I found myself distracted and distant, unable to fully focus on anything. Sarah noticed and tried to support me, but I knew I needed to confront my feelings head-on. One afternoon, I decided to visit the beach where Kelly and I used to go. It was a place filled with both happy memories and the pain of our final days together. As I walked along the shore, the waves crashing at my feet, I felt a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. I sat down on the sand, watching the horizon, and allowed myself to reflect on everything that had happened, the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. It was a bittersweet process, but I knew it was necessary. As the sun began to set, I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to see Kelly standing a few feet away. She looked surprised to see me, but walked over and sat down beside me. "Mike," she said softly, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, me neither," I replied, not looking at her. "I just needed to clear my head." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of the waves filling the space between us. Finally, Kelly spoke. "I'm sorry for everything, Mike. I know I hurt you, and I've regretted it every day." I took a deep breath, the words I had been holding in for so long finally finding their way out. "I've been through a lot since then, Kelly. I've had to rebuild my life from the ground up, and it hasn't been easy." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I've made mistakes, and I'm trying to move forward too. I wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry." Hearing her apology brought a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. "I appreciate that, Kelly. I've learned a lot from everything that happened. And I think in a way it's made me stronger." We talked for a while longer, sharing our experiences and reflecting on our past. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also healing. By the time we parted ways, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. When I returned home, Sarah was waiting for me. She looked at me with concern, and I gave her a reassuring smile. "I talked to Kelly," I said, "and I think I'm finally ready to let go of the past." Sarah hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, Mike. You've come so far." As I held her close, I knew that I had turned a corner. Confronting my past had been painful, but it had also set me free. I was ready to embrace my future with Sarah by my side and a renewed sense of hope in my heart. Life with Sarah continued to be a source of joy and stability. We navigated the ups and downs of our relationship with open communication and trust, and our bond grew stronger with each passing day. But just as we were settling into a rhythm, a new challenge arose. One evening, as we were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, I received a call from Laura, the director of the youth center. Her voice sounded urgent, and I could tell something was wrong. "Mike, we've hit a snag with our funding," Laura explained. "One of our major donors had to pull out unexpectedly, and we're facing a shortfall for next month's programs." My heart sank at the news. The youth center had become a lifeline for so many kids, and the thought of it struggling was devastating. "Is there anything we can do?" I asked, already thinking of ways to help. "We're brainstorming ideas for a last-minute fundraiser," Laura said, "but we'll need all the support we can get." I hung up the phone and turned to Sarah, explaining the situation. Without hesitation, she offered to help however she could. Together, we spent the next few days reaching out to local businesses, organizing events, and rallying the community. The day of the fundraiser arrived, and despite the short notice, the turnout was incredible. People came from all over town to support the youth center and its programs. There were food stalls, games for kids, live music, and even a silent auction. Sarah and I worked tirelessly, manning the donation booth and encouraging people to contribute. It was heartwarming to see the community come together for a common cause. By the end of the day, we had surpassed our fundraising goal. The youth center was saved, and the programs would continue without interruption. The sense of relief and accomplishment was palpable, and I couldn't have done it without Sarah by my side. As we watched the sunset from the beach that evening, exhausted but happy, I realized just how much Sarah meant to me. She was more than just a partner. She was my rock, my confidant, and my biggest supporter. Facing challenges together strengthened our bond, and I knew that whatever the future held, we could handle it as a team. With the success of the fundraiser behind us, life settled into a comfortable rhythm once again. Sarah and I continued to explore new adventures, both together and individually. It was during one of these solo adventures that I had a moment of profound self-discovery. I had always been drawn to the ocean, its vastness and unpredictability mirroring the complexities of life. One day I decided to embark on a solo diving expedition, something I had never done before. The idea of descending into the depths of the ocean alone was both exhilarating and daunting. As I geared up and prepared to dive, a mix of excitement and nervousness coursed through me. But as soon as I submerged beneath the surface, all my fears melted away. The underwater world was a mesmerizing tapestry of colors and life, a stark contrast to the chaos of the surface. With each dive, I felt a sense of peace and clarity wash over me. The silence of the ocean depths was a welcome reprieve from the noise of everyday life. It was just me in the vast expanse of the underwater world, a reminder of how small we are in the grand scheme of things. During one particularly deep dive, as I floated weightlessly among schools of fish and vibrant coral reefs, a realization dawned on me. I had spent so much time focusing on rebuilding my external life, my relationships, my passions, my community, that I had neglected to look inward. Underwater, surrounded by the serenity of the ocean, I took the time to reflect on who I was and who I wanted to be. I thought about the lessons I had learned, the mistakes I had made, and the person I had become through it all. When I surfaced, I felt reborn. The weight of past regrets and uncertainties had lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and self-assurance. I was ready to embrace the future with newfound clarity and determination. Returning home, I shared my experience with Sarah. She listened intently, her eyes shining with pride. "I'm so glad you had that moment of self-discovery, Mike," she said. "You've grown so much, and it's inspiring to see." As we sat on the beach, watching the stars twinkle overhead, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for everything that had led me to this moment. Life was a journey of constant growth and learning, and I was grateful to have Sarah by my side as we navigated its twists and turns together. With the fundraiser's success and my journey of self-discovery, a newfound sense of purpose filled my days. Sarah and I continued to cherish our time together, exploring new horizons and deepening our connection with each passing day. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sunset over the ocean, Sarah turned to me with a smile. "Mike, do you remember when we first met?" I chuckled, thinking back to that chance encounter at the surfing competition. "Of course I do. It feels like a lifetime ago." Sarah nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "It's amazing how much has changed since then. We've both grown so much individually and as a couple." I took her hand, feeling a surge of gratitude. "You've been a guiding light for me, Sarah. I don't know where I'd be without you." She leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips. "We've faced challenges together, but we've also experienced so much joy. I wouldn't trade it for anything." As we watched the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon, I knew that the future held endless possibilities for us. We were ready to embrace whatever came our way, hand in hand. As the months passed, Sarah and I continued to build a life together filled with love, adventure, and shared dreams. One dream that had always been close to my heart was to open a surf school for underprivileged kids, giving them the same sense of joy and purpose that surfing had given me. With the support of the community and a dedicated team of volunteers, we turned that dream into a reality. The surf school provided free lessons, equipment, and mentorship to kids from all walks of life, helping them build confidence, resilience, and a love for the ocean. One day, As I watched a group of kids catch their first waves and heard their laughter echoing across the beach, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what it was all about, making a positive impact, one wave at a time. Sarah stood beside me, her eyes shining with pride. "I can't believe how far we've come," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "It's been an incredible journey, and we've done it together. I couldn't have asked for a better partner." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the ocean, I knew that this was just the beginning. With Sarah by my side and our shared dreams realized, the future held endless possibilities, and I couldn't wait to see where life would take us next. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the beach as Sarah and I walked hand in hand. It had been a long journey filled with ups and downs, but we had finally reached a place of contentment and happiness. As we reached our favorite spot, a secluded stretch of sand where the waves crashed gently against the shore, I turned to Sarah. "Do you remember when we first met here?" Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling with memories. "How could I forget? It feels like a lifetime ago." We sat down, the sound of the ocean providing a soothing backdrop to our conversation. "So much has changed since then," I said, looking out at the horizon. "But one thing has remained constant, our love for each other and our shared dreams." Sarah nodded, her expression filled with love. "I'm grateful for every moment we've shared, Mike. You've brought so much joy and meaning into my life." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I have something I want to ask you," I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out a small box. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise as I opened the box to reveal a delicate ring. "Sarah, will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she nodded, a radiant smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Mike. Yes, 1,000 times yes." We embraced, the ocean breeze carrying our laughter and joy into the evening sky. At that moment, everything felt perfect, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. As we walked back to our apartment, hand in hand, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey that had led me to this point. From heartbreak and uncertainty to love and happiness, every twist and turn had been worth it. The future was uncertain, but I was confident that as long as Sarah was by my side, we could overcome anything. Together, we were ready to embark on this new beginning, hand in hand, hearts full of hope and love.